companies should be able to do lots of things agentically, right?
Right.
And
Mhm.
so how is that going right now? Is your average company able to take advantage of the concept and turn it into reality?
I would say right now it's at the early kind of crawling stages of agent approach. So right now there's, some basic agents that Microsoft and OpenAI and AWS, right? All these companies are building agents. And the part is going to be an explosion of different kinds of agents, probably millions of agents, because that's what's needed to get to the point where you can just mix and match, right?
Welcome to Practical AI, everybody. My name is Jeff. I'm here with Peter Lynn. Practical AI is brought to you by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool you can use to edit the weights of your model. With Pocket AI, you can prune over 60% of the weights in your models and increase accuracy. I do recommend, too, that you listen to us on 2x speed. It's a great way to consume this in half the time. Peter, both you and I have been hearing a lot about agents. Everyone's talking agents. Um, what what's going on? Agents are all the rage,
Yeah.
but it seems like more hype than reality, at least for now. Is that the case? And will it break through the hype barrier?
Well, agents it's a really old technology, so that's the first thing. It's been around since the 70s. So back in the 70s and 80s, you wrote agents by hand, or you use an inference rule engine, or you use some other kind of a rule engine type thing, like constraint engines, or you could use something else. But basically, it was some handwritten code plus some kind of a model that knows how to do something, how to reason, and it would do specific tasks and it would spit out something. And the idea was you could then chain together a bunch of agents to then to do a more complex task.
So it's not new, and has the term just been hijacked by AI and LLMs? Is that what's happening, or is this like a tech that's kind of on the cusp of, or a tech approach that's kind of on the cusp now that we have access to AI?
I wouldn't say that it's a new tech that's on the cusp because agents have been used in things like HVAC and sensing infrastructure, for example, like water treatment plants, electrical grids. Those have been using agents. They're very simple. They hadn't written agents, but this stuff has been used for decades. It's not anything new. The new part is everyone is now realized that okay, LLMs are nice and they're powerful, but we want to do actual work. And to do that, you need to wrap that LLM in a bunch of code and a bunch of stuff, and then put it into a container, a virtual machine, so it's secure. And you can easily spin up agents and tear them down, and you can shut them down. And so now everyone's bastardizing the term agents and just saying that it's like Copilot used to be just this chat thing, but now Microsoft had built is saying Copilot is an agent now, and so everyone is on this bandwagon of like everything's an agent.
Mhm. Okay, so let's start there then. What is an agent and what isn't an agent?
So agent simply is just some piece of code that does some function that
Okay.
runs. On top of that, you have usually some kind of a workflow or choreography that says, okay, it's like a conductor, right? So conductor says, I've got violins and cellos and drummers and all these instruments, and then conductor says, okay, you play this, you play that, and you play together in this sequence, and if you do it right, it sounds like music. If you play it wrong, it sounds like noise.
Yeah.
So an agent has kind of these little pieces of code that uses some code, whether it's handwritten or language model or whatever, that does something, and then they're just chained together so that it does a sequence of things that looks like a task, and so that's an agent.
So what isn't an agent?
So an agent is not something that doesn't operate and run on its own.
Okay. So the you were talking about Copilot, and Microsoft is selling Copilot now as an agent, but Copilot's an LLM, right? It's not an agent. And so why isn't it an agent and an LLM?
because you have to interact with it and give it a prompt, and then it gives you a response. You then read the response, decide no, it sucks, or yes, it's good. If you think it sucks, you give it more hints, and then it thinks some more. You then read the response and decide, is it good or not? An agent, in contrast, would be able to take a command, figure out if the response was correct, and refine it to the point where it's good, and then run that thing or that operation to get the desired result.
Okay. And when people talk about using RAG in this in their solutions, could you just do prompt engineering and RAG, and then all of a sudden call your LLM an agent, or do you still have to have the call, right? The something preceding that, some flow that says when this happens, prompt engineer this, kick this out, and then do that.
So RAG is really just a way to use a foundation model to consume some amount of content and give you a better response than if you just gave it a prompt. And then, so for example, back in 2023 on ChatGPT, it said this was last trained on this date. So anything after that, it couldn't reason over, right?
Hmm.
Because it was frozen at like December 2022 or December 2023. So any new content after that, it wouldn't know because it wasn't trained on it. So
Right.
RAG is to get rid of this problem of like, well, we've trained this thing, but we stopped the training at September 2024. But we've got a whole bunch of new content from September to May. We need to be able to consume that and reason over it. And so you stuff the prompt, right? So that's the retrieval augmented. So it's basically you're stuffing information, telling it, read this stuff and give me a response that I want. So no, it's not an agent.
Yeah. Okay. And so we've established that an LLM, like a chatbot or whatever, is not an agent. RAG does not get you agent status. You essentially need a sequence of things and code around it to say, when
Yep.
you see this, do this, give me this output, and then that's now we're getting into more agentic features.
Right.
Okay. So then you said container. So the container, describe the container as it's in its relationship to the outside world and its relationship to the agent.
So the container is just a way to package up a bunch of software. So you can easily one spin it up and spin up one or a thousand or a million of them. So this is a common thing in the cloud. Like you make a container. So let's say you have a container that processes online transactions. So let's say you have a shoe store and you want to process shoes. So maybe step one is you collect the shopping cart. Step three might be it goes to the warehouse and then they check the inventory. And maybe step six is someone collects the parts, prints a label, and then puts it for the outbound shipping. And maybe the next step after that is UPS comes and picks it up. Right? And so a container is just like we've packaged some amount of code so that you can easily spin up a virtual machine, run it, and then if you need to, you shut it down.
Okay. And so in that container, then you may have APIs. Is that right? Like connections
Yep.
to outside.
You have settings, you have like, okay, if it needs to read from a database, you would have the connection to the database, the authentication stuff, all the whatever, all the necessary things you need to be able to connect to some other external thing.
Okay. So now my agent, if I say on the first of the month, I want you to do assessment of or read this report on payroll, and I want you then to calculate commission and send a request to accounts payable. That
Hmm.
an agent then would need access to a couple bits of a couple reports, maybe a data set, and it may then have the ability to be spun up quickly. And then if it ever goes rogue or anything goes out, you just kill the container,
Yep.
and that's your safety mechanism, your risk management strategy.
Yeah, yeah. And so in this idea, in that situation, you would have one container that orchestrates a bunch of other agents, So each agent does a very specific task. It's like step one is this agent, step two is this agent, and step three is this agent. Step four is that agent, and on top of that, there's like a master that says, all right, do one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. So maybe it's okay if step four and five fail, you can still do the report. So
Okay.
that orchestrator, that conductor says, all right, well, it's okay if we miss a few notes. If the bassoon section misses something, we can continue with the
Yeah.
piece.
The symphony's still going. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we could have probably a lot of fun technical conversations about agent-oriented architectures then, right? Fat agents and micro agents and whatnot. But for the purpose of this conversation, so the all of that makes sense, and it basically lays out it creates the opportunity for a vision where companies should be able to do lots of things agentically, right?
Right.
And
Mhm.
so how is that going right now? Is your average company able to take advantage of the concept and turn it into reality?
I would say right now it's at the early kind of crawling stages of agent approach. So right now there's some basic agents that Microsoft and OpenAI and AWS, right? All these companies are building agents, and there probably is going to be an explosion of different kinds of agents, probably millions of agents, because that's what's needed to get to the point where you can just mix and match, right? So like, it's kind of like if I want to build an e-commerce website, let's say on Wix or on whatever, you can then pick from this menu of like, okay, I want to do this thing. I want you to look at my inventory and pick out the best shoe photo for my shoe catalog, right? And so then you would look through this category, this folder of shoe pictures, and pick the right ones for each one. And then it would then pass that off to another agent that then lays it out. And then so it would you build these agents to do all these different steps. And at the end, you would get something that you want.
Are you assuming that there's sort of a nirvana state where there is a open source sort of community approach to agents where if someone builds an agent that does that and then that's able to be used by other people that are doing the shoe search or the product search?
So I think ideally we get there, but in reality, even within one company, if you give a team of 80 people to write agents and you say, all right, we've got 400 agents we got to write. Let's say you've got 80 people, you divide it up. Well, not every single person is going to write the agent in the same way.
Yeah. But one of them
And so-
might build a better agent than the rest of them.
right.
Is that portable across that from that company to another company? Considering containers and business logic and all that stuff, is that relevant?
Well, it's all important because now if you're going to chain together a bunch of agents, the inputs and outputs might not match up,
Right.
right? So let's say that like you've got an agent that does the packing and shipping, and someone else has one that's just for packing and one that's just for shipping, and they may have different input parameters. And so now it's like, okay, well, version A of packing shipping takes these parameters, maybe it's 8, but the shipping one takes 20. Well, obviously there's a difference now. Like, how are you going to make that work? One takes 8 and one takes 20.
Right.
Like, doesn't end up.
Yeah. So it seems like it becomes sort of custom almost every time.
It'll have to be. You're going to have some engineer that goes, okay, we need to glue together this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So let's like maybe the shipping one actually says, okay, I can ship any product of this size to any of these four. Let's say they do DHL, USPS, FedEx, and UPS.
Yeah.
And so that's why maybe it takes 20 parameters, but this other one that does pack and ship only does USPS. Well, that's fine if you only want to ship USPS. But if you want to support 4 different shipping options, then you have these other thing.
But in this sense, it's almost like, libraries and object-oriented programming or whatever, where there
Yeah.
might be some standard things that people do where they can get, a big lift on, a standardized agent but you're still going to have to customize the last 20%. And then once you go outside of your organization, so for example, if you just want to get pricing on USPS, DHL, and FedEx,
Right.
some person out there might write just a basic universal pricing agent for those. And so you could then have some agents outside of your org that are sort of accessible in the cloud or whatever that are kind of common and everyone just uses
Yep.
that agent that does that pricing. But everything internal seems like you might get some acceleration, but it's ultimately going to be custom.
At the end of the day, I mean, it saves you doing the boilerplate thing, but someone still has to decide, like, okay, this is the actual process, and that's always been the hard part. Deciding like what should you support and what should you actually do. The actual like, like put two gears together. That was always the easy part.
Yeah. No, you're right. The agent projects that we've been on, the hardest part has been defining and documenting the actual process that we're trying to add agents to, not the actual monkey work of the agents.
Yeah, because I mean, like no one knows what they want until they see it, but that requires iterating n number of times till you figure out what you want.
Even just getting the processes out of people's heads that think they understand it, it's a huge challenge. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, it seems like we're months, years away from agentic nirvana, we'll call it, and that we're
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
yeah. Well, and if it does, it's just going to create other problems
Yeah.
or uh, put it this way, I'm not convinced yet that agents are going to replace people. It seems right now that it's just moving the people around a little bit.
No, it's just now you're gonna get people that are really good at figuring out what agents break.
Yeah, good.
That's the difference.
All right, Peter, thanks for the heads up on this. As you know, you can follow us on Spotify. You can also ask questions and we'll try to respond. If you have any good ideas for topics that you'd love to hear about, let us know. Otherwise, we will see you next time, and thanks for listening. Take care, everybody.